It is well known that the flat earthers do not have a model that works, like ever. So when I see videos that try to show working models, I always have a look. And today is one of those videos. Can this flat earther do the impossible and make a model work? Let's find out. They absolutely can't, but still, let's find out. Hello all and welcome along to another video with me, Simon Dan. Thanks very much for joining me. Before we crack on with this one, another reminder that this channel now uploads videos daily. So if you don't already subscribe, make sure you do and click that subscribe button now so you don't miss any of the nonsense. Right, on with today's video then, which comes from a channel called Iron Horse. And he wants to show us his flat earth sun model. Of course he does. Let's have a look, shall we?
Basically what I'm trying to show here is a very oversimplified version of what the flat earth model looks like. That's our basic model. Equator's in the middle, the Tropic of Cancer inside of the equator, Tropic of Capricorn outside of it. So that gives us our solstices and our seasons.
A model, by the way, which is entirely impossible, as proven of course by the 24-hour sun in Antarctica.
Maybe even if I handheld it, I don't know. If you look then, when it's summer in the southern hemisphere, southern part of the half-sphere, the daylight coming into the inner side is coming through multiple atmospheres. That's why it creates winter. And when it's over the Tropic of Cancer, it's the opposite. We get the sun coming from the north in the summer, and that is our winter. So of course, you know, Cancer June 22nd, 2 equinoxes, September and March 22nd, December 22nd is the solstice for the southern hemisphere, so our southern summer solstice.
All of which is explained perfectly well by a tilted rotating globe. Tilt the globe 23.5 degrees and hey presto, seasons.
Which is the winter's northerns, the northern's winter solstice. So I'll probably just pause that since I think that's sort of speaks for itself. While the sun is not changing speed as it spirals up higher and higher, it gets further and further away. So just like when you're looking down a tunnel, the far end of the tunnel looks a lot smaller, and that therefore then creates a smaller apparition of light in the firmament above the earth.
The problem is, of course, if the sun is moving around different rings at different times of the year, and you want to keep the day length of 24 hours the same, then the sun has to travel at different speeds at different times of the year. That is a fact. It doesn't do that, so therefore your model's already destroyed.
To the eye of the viewer. So everything in perspective is one of the trickiest things to understand, especially when it comes to things like the sun. So I'm just going to pause for a second and redo another diagram. Okay, so as I expected, this is trickier to draw than I thought, and also the fact none of the marker pens work except a simple black one. So I'm just going to try and keep it as simple as possible to explain what I fully believe the flat earth model is actually doing, and it's virtually impossible to draw anything to scale.
Well, perhaps, but flat earthers don't usually grasp scale anyway, so hey ho.
Like even just normal human perspective, if you drew yourself 1 millimeter high, you'd have to draw a line 3 meters, so 3 of these long, just to show how far the horizon would be if you stood 1 millimeter high. So
does that not tell you something about just how big the earth is?
We have to forget about scale for the sake of this very simple basic example. So what I've just drawn is 3 straight lines. So that's the earth, that's our atmosphere, and that's our firmament. And I believe the firmament is very flat and it works like a frosted glass ice sheet. I believe in fact it is ice, quite likely frozen hydrogen, because as the lighter gases rise to a certain point, it gets so frigid and freezing cold, that's where they freeze.
Frozen hydrogen? Literally one of the worst gases you could have picked here. Hydrogen freezes at minus 259 degrees Celsius. That is only 14 degrees warmer than absolute zero. Do you have any idea how almost impossible that is?
And then just beneath it, I wonder if I can get the blue to work. Just to... Yeah, cool. So just beneath that layer there is what I would consider to be a superfluid sea of helium. So it's so cold that it turns to liquid, but it's still so light that it actually rests beneath the firmament like the way water rests on the sea floor.
Now, helium's boiling point is minus 269 degrees Celsius. So you have problems here because the frozen hydrogen is warmer, which means it would boil the helium away.
And I believe that the moon actually floats on that sea within our side of the firmament. The atmosphere goes up to about here, and I would say if that's about halfway, about 24 miles, that's about the maximum that helium balloons and so forth can get to. And technically around 12 to 14 miles high is our blue sky layer. So we've got blue down here. When aeroplanes or anything breaks through that layer, firmament B, I'll even write that in. Firmament. Try not to rub everything out with my left hand. Firmament B is a gaseous layer. We can't breathe, there's no oxygen or anything. The gases of the atmosphere fluoresce to create daylight down in this layer. So when they are fluorescing, we see no stars, we have daylight, the daylight scatters.
So in your model then, daylight is caused by gases fluorescing. You know, we've actually measured why the sky is blue, right? It's called Rayleigh scattering. Photons interacting with air molecules, scattering short wavelengths more than long ones. This is why the sky is blue in the day and why sunsets go red. Science, not guesses.
So like this room, for example, can be fully illuminated without a single ray of sunlight coming in any window. You know, direct sunlight casts a distinct shadow. As you can probably see, there's very little shadow at all. I do have a fluorescent light on as well. But daylight is our ordinary light that will fill a room. It's generally called the Rayleigh scattering, but I don't believe that's the correct term for it. And it's not about the wavelengths of light and everything. It's about the way the sun stimulates the noble gases to create the light.
And I assume you have evidence for this theory? If the sky was fluorescing because of noble gases, it would glow at night too. We'd all live under a permanent neon sign. And yet, funny thing, when the sun sets, the sky goes dark. Almost as if daylight actually comes from the sun. We know that Rayleigh scattering is wavelength dependent. We know that. Blue light gets scattered more than red, which is why the sky is blue at noon and orange at sunset, as I already said. We can measure it with lasers and predict it mathematically. And it works everywhere. Earth, Mars, even the atmosphere of Titan.
So that's worth bearing in mind. So let's now assume we have to have our sun. In my opinion, if this is 60 to 70 miles high, that's 12 to 14 miles high. The sun, thousands of miles high, would be about the height of the ceiling. So, I'll just tilt the camera back a little bit. It's pretty high ceiling here. It'd have to be at least that to come even close to showing some amount of scale. So please bear that in mind, that when I start to draw a sun, maybe a red will work. If I do just start to draw one here, that's way, way, way out of scale. So let's say then we have person A down here and the person B over here. Put our arms to. As they look up through the firmament, this is where he'll see his hot spot, and this is where he'll see his hot spot. So we've only got the one sun that's well known, but because they're distance apart, it becomes in direct line of sight to the viewer, creating an apparent position of the sun.
So are you saying then that two people see completely different suns? If that were true, then during a solar eclipse, people standing a few hundred miles apart would see the moon cover totally different parts of the sun. But they don't. We can predict eclipses to the second across entire continents because we can triangulate the sun and the moon. And both are exactly where real science says they should be.
And that's pretty much why the globe model has so successfully failed for so many decades and centuries, is because they haven't understood the basics of this. They think this person thinks that's the sun there, this person thinks that's the sun there, but then they both mistakenly think they're looking at the same sun here, which they're not. It's actually way, way, way up there, creating an apparition or a bright spot, which I was mistakenly calling a hot spot because it's not hot. The heat does not come from the sun. Keep that in mind.
Well, it absolutely does. We can prove that. Unless, of course, you want to supply evidence as to where it does come from.
So that's our basic model of perspective of why you cannot triangulate. Let's watch your time here. Can't go over 10 minutes. Why you cannot triangulate to the sun. Because you're triangulating to what you think is the same thing, which is way the hell up there, but you're only seeing it here. So if you measure your distance, which is what you've done, and you've said, okay, we're 500 miles apart from there to there, then measuring to these, which are way up there, is going to give you the impression that this here, that you think you're looking at, is 93 million miles away, when in fact, it's 60 to 70 miles.
Astronomers around the world, amateur and professional, routinely triangulate the sun's position. Not once, not twice, but millions of times across centuries. And guess what? They all get the same answer, around 93 million miles. How do we know it works? Because triangulation lets us predict things, like eclipses and transits of Venus, and the exact distance to the moon using simple geometry. If the sun really was 60 miles above us, then local weather balloons would be just brushing its surface. Worse still, everyone a few hundred miles apart would see it at completely different places in the sky. That is not what happens.
60 to 70 between there and there. That's actual height. I'll probably have to do a second part to this, or I might be able to quickly do it. Let's assume now that this is under a lake instead. And so we've got a fish swimming around in the lake. So now we're only talking 6 to 7 meters from the bottom of the lake to the top of the lake.
I've just decided that I no longer want to watch this video because it will likely be more unsubstantiated nonsense. Let's wrap this one up. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this flat earther's sun-earth model. As I say, we're all done and dusted for another video. Thanks so much for watching today. As ever, it's appreciated. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe to the channel like I said at the beginning, and a big thumbs up too as well will be appreciated. I've been Simon Dan. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow for a Tinfoil Tuesday that really will feature Russell Brand. See you then.